What do you think we do? What did they expect? Go down to the brew. Will we pick an egg? We will occupy. That is why we cry. Don't shut up at the place.
Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. We are strong. Legion girl working hard on the factory floor. Mouths to feed and bills to pay. The teleman's at your door. Then one day you hear the news, the factory's closing down. That is when you all decide to take a stand. To take a stand.
Inverclyde's economy started declining relatively soon after the Second World War, particularly in staple industries like shipbuilding, textiles and the sugar houses. And the situation was so severe that by 1960 the area was designated as a development district, being somewhere that unemployment would continue to persist without some form of government intervention. Being a development district meant that Inverclyde Council could approach companies and try and attract firms to open factories and provide employment through offering them state support and public subsidies. And it was that designation as a development district that encouraged VF Corporation to open a factory in 1970.
My job was on waistbands, so I would join the material up with a waistband. It was a complicated job, for a wee 16-year-old to go in. You had about 6 weeks to train to do this job, and if you couldn't do it in 6 weeks, you were out the door.
I started the week after you, and Christine was just getting used with the machine, but the wee trainer would say, well, Mary would say, oh, you've made the mistake, and she says to me, here, you pick that out now. There was no friendship going to happen.
She says,
because
pick your own work.
But after that, we kept it together and we've remained friends. I don't know how.
Some of my labels were instead of going straight across, it was going down that way. So they sent the whole bundle back to you. So you had to go through all this 30 to check that every label was on straight. And it took up time. It was because you had to do so many numbers a day.
It was like piecework. And, the more you done, the more you earned in Lees. That was what it was. But it was like Ina McCackle and Ellen Monaghan, and it was all them. It was on inspect as well, even before the sit-in. They were checking our work and checking us, really. You get it done right.
VF had a long history of operating factories in places where trade union organisation was more difficult. In the United States, for example, most of their plants were sited in states that were right-to-work states, where legislation was in place to make it difficult for workers to organise. And they began this approach when they opened the factory in Greenock, following the example of other multinationals like IBM, who strictly prohibited trade union organisation. Once the factory was open, however, Helen Monaghan started noticing inherent unfairness in the way that some of the workers were being treated. This led to her being sacked in 1971 because she was being labelled as a troublemaker for standing up for her fellow workers.
You fought a battle long and hard, fueled by defiance, from shipbuilders to miners who supported your alliance.
He sent for me and he said he was sacking one girl on the pockets, and I said, and how are you sacking one girl? Because she did complain about the cold. I said, no, 6 girls complained about the cold, because I knew he couldn't bag 6, because the factory could have came to a stop because they were able to sew the pockets. So I said, well, if you're going to bag her, just bag the 6. And no, he wasn't going to bag her, so instead he just bagged me. So me and the lassie that saw in the pockets, that's the very first time I was out in the street. And then when I went in, he said I was getting my books, and I said, and what's the complaint? They said, you're a troublemaker. And I said, oh well. So I risked to go out, and he went, no, don't go out that way, that put you on the street, and that way put you into the factory. I said, no, I'm going that way. I said, to get my coat, because I knew the lasses would see me, so I went out. He didn't want them to see me. And I said, they were shouting, and I said, I'm sacked. And the next thing, all the machines stopped, and they were all out. That was at the very beginning. That's before we had a union. Well, we had a union, but they didn't recognise it. So I had to go to arbitration after that to get the union started. The first thing that happened was they were moving the cutting room over to Northern Ireland. Before that, they moved our girls. Some of our girls went to Northern Ireland to learn the Irish people to make the jeans. They'd never made jeans. It was a VF corporation at the time, and they only made nylons and woolens. Then they sent the cutting room over, and I says to the boss up there, if you sent the cutting room, if shifted the cutting room, what's happening to us? Because I'm sure if you've shifted the cutting room and you've got to send the cut goods back here to get sewn, it's going to cost a lot. So it doesn't look good, but they denied it. Went in for the pay rise, and then it came right out, no, we can't afford the pay rise, value of the pound, this, that, the next thing. And they were going to make us redundant.
The party factory I worked in was the parts. It was at the top end, and it's right outside the offices where the bosses were. And you seen Ellen going in and out, and the blind would go down, and the blind would go up. And you saying to yourself, there's something going on in here, lassies. No, well, we're all on the line working, and everybody's beginning to notice it. Oh, here, Ellen away back in there again. So when we were in the canteen at dinner time, Ellen came out. She says, I went in and proposed this, that and everything. Like cut of wages, short week, everything she could think about. And you could see, because Ellen was starting to get kind of angry and that, and like, no matter what she was going in with, she was coming out with nothing.
We got called into the canteen for a meeting with the trade union to tell us that the Legions, they want to close us down, and everybody was up in arms, nobody wants to lose their job. So they had this big discussion, and they decided to take industrial action, and it came out, it all panned out, it was to have a sit-in.
I would say there was a bit of a sense of panic as well, because nobody quite understood exactly what was going to be happening. When they're saying we're going to take over the factory, everybody's got things they've got to do after work, and where do we go, what happens for here? And there was one phone, you didn't have mobile phones then, there was one phone in the place, so everybody was all queued up to try and phone home and explain, we're going to be stuck in this factory, we're going to be staying here, we're going to be sleeping here.
Listen, I can't stay for long. There's a big queue for the phone. I need you to ask my mammy to take the way into school.
The shop stewards just came out and says we're doing a sit-in. I don't know what it is, Daddy. I'm just doing what I'm told.
Could be days, but we're no messing about. We barricaded the doors with piles of chairs. The management can't get in.
No, the track's on fire.
Hello?
Listen, Tommy,
Granny's not coming home tonight.
What do you mean you're not coming home? You'd promised you'd get us chips.
Don't worry, I've banked a few pounds in a special place.
You dancer. I'll get the money from under the clock.
Have you been snooping?
No, I haven't been snooping. That's where it always is.
Now, best behaviour.
Aye, I'll be polite.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Shannon! I'm going to get chips. Gran's got to work late or something.
What happened in Greenock, when the Lees come in, they got a grant to open that factory. They didn't pay rent and they got all their machinery for nothing. So as far as I was concerned, that machinery belonged to us. It didn't belong to them. They were going to take it over to Northern Ireland. And there was nothing wrong with the workforce because we were told often enough how good we were. So I said, we've got to do something about it. And the only thing is we've got to keep this machinery here. So I went in, and before I went in, we had a meeting and with the workforce in the canteen. We said, now, if I come out and I say no, they said, no, not everything we've asked for. I says, we'll barricade ourselves in.
So there's this agreement that we get into the canteen anyway, and that was where we all sort of settled, but we didn't know how long we were going to be settling for. So people started to go to the phone, trying to get through to their, their parents and what. So it was a scramble, and before we knew it, a payphone was jammed. Then we all started to get hungry. Like, what are we going to do for food? What are we going to do? So somebody mentioned the chippy, but how are we going to get to the chippy? And I thought, hold on. I remember sitting at my lunch in the canteen and watching the workmen. And it was like a wee sort of garden, but the factory was built round this garden, but the men used to go out through the wee door. I seen one of them going up and over the pipe, because one of the days the wee door was locked. And I said, where's that guy going? So he went up their own pipe and out and over the other side of the wall. And I said, I know how to get out. So I gets over the roof, drops down the other side, just dropped down. It was no high, right? So we dropped down the other side, and away we went down to Aldo's. I said, we've want as many fish suppers with this bag of money. And he went, don't bloody annoy me tonight. I'm not in the mood to be annoyed tonight. I said, Aldo, I'm dead serious. You're going to have to count this money out. Raffaella, come out here. So Raffaella gets a job of counting all the money out. He said, I'll give you what I can for the money. I said, Aldo, just pile it in boxes. I said, I'll even give you a lift up. I said, Aldo, you're an absolute star. See, while we're waiting on it, I'll run over and tell my mammy what we're doing. And she went, where have you been? I was like, Mum, listen, we're doing a sitting. She went, I'll sit in you. She went, your tea's in the oven, it's bloody ruined. And where's that other one? I said, she's still up there. She went, what do you mean a sitting? I said, we're occupying the factory. She went, oh, I hope it's nothing to do with you. And I was like, nothing to do with me, Mum.
Got to keep things moving, family to keep. Got to get those bills paid or we're living on the street. Got so much to do, I'd best put on my skates. Got to change this world now, feels like I'm spinning plates. Got to change this world now, feels like I'm spinning plates.
Can I have 2 portions of chips, a bottle of iron brew and a pickled onion, please?
Sorry, wee man. We've been cleaned out. That lot up at Lee's are away with 240 suppers.
the funniest thing was Maggie Wallace, the first night. I think it was after she'd been out on the roof for the fish suppers and come back. She entertained us with doing Rod Stewart up on the canteen floor with a brush and singing and dancing, and it was so funny.
So myself and Catherine Robertson entertained everybody. We done a few songs, and it was good, you know, so everybody's morale was good.
I remember Maggie shouting over the tannoy, good morning, Heidi hi, good morning campers. So Maggie did, she kept this, she was in the Dirty Dozen, she kept her spirits up, she was the
leader of the gang.
She was never serious, Maggie, at all about anything. No. I don't think she is now either.
A Dirty Dozen, as we seen them, that was all the young ones, so they be a young team. They were all 16 and that, you know, like Wayne's 18, I'm still little Wayne myself. But once they all got together, because there were about 12 or 13 of them, they named them a Dirty Dozen. Because they were always together, they were like a wee clique.
The Dirty Dozen came about because we were all in the big canteen at the time, sleeping. So, but we were young, so we were carrying on and keeping everybody wakened. So we get told to get out and go to the cloakroom and sleep. So there was like 13 of us moved into the cloakroom, and we all had our camp beds and our sleeping bags. And there was one time that we were in this wee office. It was attached. It was on the factory floor, and we were doing the Ouija board. And obviously somebody was moving it with their finger. But we had this candle in the corner and a glass, and the glass exploded with the heat. So there was like 12 or 13 of us screaming, trying to pull each other back to get out the wee door. So it was that was really funny, wasn't it?
Chips are done, right? The word gets round, and the families were starting to appear with flasks and like, what do we need? You know, like bedding, blankets. And Ellen was like, well, you know, we don't know how long we're going to be here, but we're going to have to stay here overnight.
My mum, Helen Harrington, who worked for Leeds for about many years, I remember coming in from work one day, and my mum, who's normally in just about the same time as me, she wasn't home, and we got a phone call from my mum to say that they were having a sit-in because they were trying to close the plant, and this was their way of sort of protesting. So they were having a sit-in, which we found absolutely hilarious. And me and my brother and myself we were absolutely howling at the fact that they were sitting in this factory, until she told me that they were going to be sitting in and they would be there all night, which then meant it wasn't funny anymore because I was having to make dinner and I was having to look after my older brother and my dad. So me being 18 at the time, and it really was the most important thing that was going on in my life, like my mum having a sit-in. But the reality of having to start mucking in and housework and cooking and stuff like that, it's not something that I was looking forward to be honest.
Mum, I'm stuck.
Well, no wonder. Your pencil's bust.
Oh, well, that's not it. It's just too hard.
What have I told you?
When it comes to maths, the answer's right in front of you.
Good. Now, I've got to work, but your dad will be back soon and he can help you.
But he's worse than me.
Well, it's just as well we've got a secret weapon.
I'd rather fail.
Nonsense. Sarah! Sarah! Your brother needs help with his maths homework.
Oh, Mum, I'm meant to be meeting Vicky at the Cart Sweet in half an hour.
Well, then I guess you're going to be late.
Dad, Mum's keeping me in.
For what? You been smoking again?
No.
Boy wonder he needs help with his maths homework.
Have you got to head up the road again, hen?
No rest for the wicked.
Well, the sooner you get started, the sooner you'll get finished.
My dad was Pat Arkley, who was a big trade unionist, always was, getting back when he was a young man. So I had phoned my dad and told him we were taking over the factory and could he contact, like, say, the Telegraph and other people.
Nothing was getting done with any of the newspapers at the time, including ourselves. It was mentioned that they were there, but nothing was really getting done. So, me being, as I was, a young reporter about in my 30s, I got kind of nosy, and I went up and knocked at the door, and don't know who it was that came out at the time, but somebody came out and spoke to me, and they were very apprehensive of who I was and what I wanted. They were all very nice, all very cheery, because it was early on in their sit-in.
We always had departmental meetings first thing in the morning so that the night shift could attend before they went home. And this particular Friday morning, we had a meeting to deal with business of our own. Can't remember what that business was. But nevertheless, at the end of the meeting, one of our members, Ted Stewart, when I was asking for any other business, said, what we're going to do to support these women at Lee's Jeans. And of course, nobody knew anything about it because they'd only began the occupation the night before. And Ted got to know because he was one of the very few guys in the place who had a car, and he heard it on the news and he went to work. So he explained what had happened. And we said, well, the first thing we'll have to do is give them some sort of financial support. So it was Ted who recommended that we donate 50 pence per head per week, which was quite a substantial amount at that time. Normally, if we were asked to support a strike somewhere, it would be 5 pence or 10 pence. Because it was local, he suggested a figure of 50 pence. So that was the start. So on that particular day, because, as I said, we used the existing shop stewards fund and there was money in it, as soon as the meeting finished, Billy Matthews, who was our treasurer, spoke to me and says, look, why don't we work tonight with the first payment, because there's money lying in the kitty. So Billy and I went up that night to the factory and spoke to Helen Monaghan and gave her the first donation and the promise that as long as this lasts, you'll be getting this from Lithgow's Platers every week. And she was delighted, but it was it was quite funny that first night, because when we went in, there was a group of radical feminists from Liverpool who were delighted that these women were taking on a multinational company, as were we. And about 8 o'clock, Helen said to her daughter Marie, who was there as well, oh God, look at the time, Marie, I'll need to go down and make your daddy's tea. And of course, these women were horrified at the thought.
But the shipyard men also were going through a bad time themselves, and they're still willing to give us all 50 pence of their wage, which was amazing. And also the community as well, all the local community, like your butchers, veg, white sides, all that, came to the sit-in with boxes of fruit and veg, butcher meat. Things were just starting to all come, but the beds were the first thing that came. On the first night, we realised we were going to be staying there. We had this one window, and people were handing stuff in like blankets because it was frozen. And well, nothing to lie on, nothing to... But the shipyard men went and got it sorted out. The shop stewards went and get the wee camp beds and all that. I don't know if they were the blacks, like what you put in a tent nowadays. But that was the start of it, getting the beds in.
I remember we grabbed the medical room because it had a bed in it. I thought, oh, hold on, I had a bed in there, that'll do us. So there were so many of us crammed in the medical room, sleeping inside with duffel coats and all that. And, you know, and that went on. I don't think anybody even slept because there were ones sitting up in chairs and stuff. So that was us. We got our first night in. As I say, the word started to get round, people were starting to appear, right? But we couldn't let people in or whatever. So, well, Ellen, how long is this going to last? I don't know. So we just went with the flow, and this went on. So it went on for like maybe a couple of days, you know, and we're still in the factory, you know, occupying the factory. Then we made up a rota. We're like, look, this is going to have to be sorted. You know, if we're going to be here, we don't know how long for, we're going to have to sort out a rota. Who's cleaning? Who's cooking? Who's doing, you know, the mechanics oiled all the machines and all that.
We should have been there from 7 at night to 7 in the morning, but on a Saturday night we would duke out and go to the Celtic or Shamrock Club, and we would have our night out and then toddle back up at 11 o'clock at night, back up to the factory, back into the cloakroom. So there was 13 people walking out at the Celtic at one time. I think the older ones in the factory were glad to get their days right enough.
There's loads of funny things that happened over the course of even the few weeks that I was in. Like people doing knitting, girls learning to knit and like, dropping stitches, and they wouldn't realise you're halfway through, and then one of the other older ladies would say, "Oh, you've dropped some," and it would be halfway through doing a wee jump, and it would be a big roll right down, like a big missing stitch the whole way right through, so we'd have to take it back to the start.
Stand together, sit together, eat and sleep and knit together, making lifelong friends forever, all together now.
What day is it? Thursday? What are we missing on the telly? Top of the Pops. Spandy Ballet's meant to be on. I love that Tony Hadley. That big Jessie Wallop. I like that Simon Le Bon for Duran Duran. Would think it came out my bed for Snowden, know what I mean? How long do you think we'll be stuck here for? How? You bored already? Well, it's 3 weeks since I've had a snog. You still seeing that Charlie? Aye, but he's getting chucked. How? Has he been trying it on? No, that's the problem. I can't believe that old bat stuck us in the cloak to sleep. No, I know. The cheating is like Wayne's. Och, don't say Wayne's. I miss my wee brother and sisters. You're just missing servants. They are bidding for you. Ugh, I just dropped a stitch.
Eat and sleep and knit together, making lifelong friends forever, all together now.
There was much criticism of the Workers' Union for refusing to support them when the action started. This was a union whose membership was 90% women, but its executive board was almost entirely male, and they'd a long track record of not supporting women workers taking action, including during a similar sit-in in Fakenham during the 1970s, when a full-time official was quoted as saying to them, "Stop being silly girls and go home." We're sitting in the Working Class Movement Library in Salford, which is one of the biggest collections in Britain of people's history, working class history, trade union history. And I came across this place when I was researching the occupation. I was looking for the archive materials, newspapers, letters and that kind of thing. And I discovered that it's here where the collections of the National Union and Tailor and Garment Workers are housed. And what I found when I got here was a specific folder that Lynette, who was the archivist at the time, pulled out for me. It is entirely related to the Legion's occupation. So there's handwritten letters, there's material from across the globe expressing solidarity, there's the union's kind of response to the criticism they were receiving, and thank you letters written by Helen Monaghan to people that had supported the struggle. During those 6 weeks when the dispute first began and began unofficially, there was widespread public condemnation of the union refusing to make it official. Now, the reason they gave for that was they were unsure around the legalities of operating a sit-in. That was the reason they gave to the workers, and they claimed that they were seeking legal advice around that. Interestingly, one of the documents here is that legal advice, and a couple of things are really interesting about it. First of all, it wasn't sought until May. So a good few months into the sit-in was when they actually started looking at whether or not it was legal or illegal. And the second interesting aspect about it is the response from the legal advisors was that it very probably was a legal occupation. So the excuse that the union was given really didn't stand up. And we can see here the advice given by the solicitors, and they state quite clearly it is quite possible that the occupation is lawful. So the reason given for the union about the illegality of the sit-in doesn't hold up when you actually go through these records and look at the advice they were receiving. Unions aren't very comfortable when workers at the grassroots level take the impetus themselves to launch a campaign like this. And what you see from the minutes of the unions meetings and the correspondence that are held here in Salford is a real confusion about how do we respond to the action of these Greenokian women who have gotten in before us and started taking this incredibly militant action. They don't seem to know how to control it. And that's what seems to be the real problem they had. How can we control this dispute?
I was expecting Alex Smith.
Misunderstanding. My apologies. Mark Murray, Temporary Secretary of the Northern Branch of the NUTGW.
We were told Alex Smith would be here.
I'm afraid I'll have to do. He's tied up with matters of national importance.
We're a matter of national importance.
Well, the documentation says otherwise. When you took a show of hands on the first strike vote, that was against union rules. This sit-in is illegal, and we urge you to reconsider your position. The National Executive feel that you and your members should...
Our subscription pays your wages. You work for us, not the other way round. So, you can go back and tell your boss that we won't be bullied by him or anyone else. This action might be inconvenient, but it's legal all the same. And he knows it. You can see yourself out.
My full-time official started to get a wee bit jittery, and he says to me, the General Secretary wants to see you in London. And I said, oh aye. His name was Smith at the time. I mean, I knew him because way back when I first became a shop steward, I went and did a couple of courses. And he was the teacher, and it was down in Irvine at the time. So I kind of knew him. So anyway, we went to London, and as we were going down to London, he says to me, as far as I was concerned, he was wanting me to give up, but I wouldn't give up. And he says to me when he was going down, now just watch what you're saying to him when you get down here, because he can do you harm. I said, he can't do me harm. I says, I'm not going anywhere.
The main limitation of not being an official dispute is that you can't use the resources a union has at their disposal. Things like putting out press releases, getting support from other unions, and crucially for the workers, receiving strike pay so that they could get some kind of income while they weren't working and occupying the factory. It was 6 weeks before they finally recognised the dispute and made it official, and this led to extensive criticism from across the labour movement, who were demanding that the NUTGW supported their members and supported the action that they were taking to save jobs during a period of economic turmoil.
Wasn't much action. There was nobody coming from the council at the time. They hadn't taken much notice of it at all, which was a bit disappointing. I remember one day, ex-provost Jimmy Boyd, he appeared about lunchtime as well, and Helen Monaghan came to the door, and Jimmy knocked at the door, expecting just to walk in, and Helen's finger was wagging in front, saying, "Where have you been for the last 12 weeks?" And he was a bit put out by that, but she was quite right.
We must have been in it about 10 weeks, and nobody came for the council to back me up or say she's right in what she says. And I didn't know the Telegraph had caught that picture, but somebody said there's somebody to see you, and he walked in. And I was so angry. I said, what are you doing here? I said, you couldn't come and see us before. Now 10 weeks, you know we're serious and you're up to make a name for yourself.
The Lee Jean sit-in became a cause célèbre of the labour movement across Britain, and trade unionists visited the factory to see the workers that were fighting back against their multinational employer. This included Michael Foot, the leader of the Labour Party at the time, and famous Socialist Labour MP Tony Benn, who wrote in his diaries how impressed he was at the work Helen was doing to organise the workers in fighting against the factory closure.
Got to keep things moving, family to keep. Got to get bills paid or we're living on the street.
Semiconductors were non-union, so they would pass up in the bus and snub us like that at the window, and they didn't want to know us, but they were parking in our car park. So during the night I said to the Dirty Dozen, come on, we'll get out, and we'll let all their tyres down. So when they got up in the morning, the big sergeant appeared at the door with the braiding and the hat, and he went, could I speak to Ellen Monaghan, please? And she went, hello, Sergeant, how can I help you? He said, I believe that some of the girls were out during the night and let the tyres down in the semiconductors cars.
I was going to kill them.
So she shouts, could somebody go and get Maggie Wallace and the Dirty Dozen? So I came out and she went, Sergeant wants to know who let the tyres down in the cars in the car park. And I went, it was me. So they all went quiet. And she went, what did you do that for? I said, because they're in our car park. I said, and they shouldn't have been there, Ellen. That's our car park, no theirs. I said, they don't want to know us. They snib us when they got on the bus with their snooty noses up to their semiconductors. I said, no. I said, they shouldn't be parking in there. She went, Sergeant, I'm awful sorry. She said, I'll be dealing with this. And he went, oh, it's all right. So he kind of laughed and he was like, no. He went, it's all right, Ellen. He said, but don't let it happen again. I went, oh, no, sorry. So that was that. So the guy goes away, big sergeant goes away, and she went, I want a word with you. And I went, oh, what is it? She went, I've got a good mind to put you out. I said, oh, well, that's a bit steep. She went, no, that's the way it's looking. I'm putting you out. I went, all right, if that's the way you feel. So I thought for a minute and I thought, get your brain going here, Maggie. I went, wait a minute, Ellen. I said, I'm bored with this. She went, oh, you're bored? I said, I am bored, and that's why I'm doing stuff. I said, you're looking for somebody to go on these meetings and travel and talk and conferences and all that. I'll do it. And she went, you're all right then. You sure? I said, aye, I'm sure. She went, that's fine. She went, I'll discuss this with you and we'll get it all sorted. I went, no, I'm happy to do that. And then I'm not in any bother. And then if it helps everybody in the sitting, then I'll go along with it. I'm not, I'm not wanting to be like this, Ellen, but I'm just fed up. Right, okay. So that was it. And that was the start of it.
I always remember Ellen saying that Maggie and Catherine are a thorn in my side. She would put us anywhere, get us out of factory, they're doing my head in kind of thing. But in a funny way. There was a time once Maggie and I went to Edinburgh to stay with, I think they were the militants or something. Like that. You're only 18, you haven't got a clue who these people are. Socialist Workers' Party, that's what I remember now. So we get sent to his house. We'd never get sent to a house. We get sent to meet these people, but they put us up for the night, as we did in a whole lot of other things. Maggie says, right, we'll get washed and we'll get our jammies on and get in. Like, give our head down for the night. Maggie's like, but wrap your head in a towel, you don't know what's on the beds and that. And Maggie goes to look for her pyjamas and one of Wayne's walks in with her jammies on. You seen Maggie's face, because that just ain't her. She went, Wayne's got my jammies on. Well, and me, I was totally pissed myself laughing, know what I mean? And she's like, I went, oh Maggie, what are we going to do? She went, that's my job. Well, I'm not taking them now.
Well, I don't know how we got about, they just maybe asked, was there anybody prepared to travel to London? And it wasn't, oh, we'll go home and get an overnight bag or anything. It was just, you're going the way you are, and that was it. We travelled down, I think it was that big fountain in London, and we're collecting money, and I think you went to the toilets, public toilets, and get your face washed, and then you come back up the road again.
Anne-Marie delegated me to speak, so I was so nervous, and it was like a social club, and I had to tell them why we were sitting in and why they were moving all the jobs to Ireland, and they were wanting, because the grants had run out in Greenock, and I was so nervous, and everybody all stood up and gave me a big applause, so I was all pleased with myself after it.
Anywhere you went like that and you spoke, they would put a bucket round for you. Every time they went out, they come in with money. No matter where they went, they come in with money. And I must say they were great. I mean, They were well disciplined as long as you kept them, and they were willing to do anything for you.
We met Vanessa Redgrave, so she was at one of the conferences. She was very interested in the whole thing, the whole sit-in and all that, but she was like kind of militant, which we didn't get, you know, done why. We're just sort of, all right, that's a film star, all right, oh, very good. And then when she said to us, I think you should up the gun. I thought, oh, that's a great idea, that. So you want us to shoot everybody that was coming near the factory, and I thought, I'm already in enough trouble without me taking up a gun.
So we ended up going and staying with this people that lived in a townhouse at Tufnell Park in London. And Lorraine and I got up, we got up, we were lying this flaring a mattress with a sheet over it. And we got up and I says to her, do you fancy a bacon roll? Right? Because everybody done everything for themselves, you know, that come in. But here I had put a bacon on the grill. And the next minute I thought it was a flying saucer. It went right out the window. They were all vegetarians and weren't allowed meat in the house. Well, we're sitting there like that. She's like that. What the? I went, what are we going to do? I said, Mum, we'll go a walk and we'll go and buy a hot roll. They're like, we're vegetarian, don't allow any meat, anything like that in here. Didn't even have a door on the toilet. There were about 3 of them sharing a bath. I don't know where we were. I don't know. But opened my eyes up. I think I grew up an extra couple of years. That time I went on the different places.
Although we had a lot of great communication with the girls, on the other side, the VF Corporation, they just weren't really wanting to come back to us at all. The questions that were asked went mostly unanswered. I think it was a bit disappointing for ourselves and for the girls that they weren't coming back, but that was the way it went the whole time. Right up till the end, they stuck it out. They weren't going to do anything. And if it hadn't been for the girls going for so long, they would have just walked away from it.
I was 18 when I started in the factory, and I was 20 when the sit-in started. I was a machinist in the factory, but had to leave the sit-in due to getting married. I got married on the 19th of June, and obviously we had a wedding to pay for, so couldn't afford to keep not working.
6 weeks Christine had been in it, and like that she told us, the family, that she was leaving and she was going for another job, and I wasn't happy. Called her a scab, fell out with her. My dad fell out with her, and it did cause some animosity in the house, because as far as I was concerned, she was jumping ship, she was abandoning us, leaving us. At the time, I didn't think on, I was only a wee lassie, I was only 19. I didn't realise, you know, she was paying for her own wedding, so she had to earn wages, she had to earn money to help pay for her own wedding.
I wasn't the only person who left the sit-in. There was numerous girls left the sit-in, all for their own personal reasons, and they were very supportive towards that. And no matter when you see them, the girls, the ladies, the older ladies, the younger girls, they'll still speak to you. They'll have you on Facebook, and so yes, you still got on with all these girls.
We made up. Had a fantastic day. It was lovely. Couldn't get much for a wedding present because we weren't getting wages, you know, so got what I could for her. But we made up. We became back to be good friends again.
You were my maid of honour.
Our Sister's Day, and I was in maid of honour. I was her best maid. So, but no, it was a lovely day, and it all turned out well for her in the end, and for us.
Sake, I've just dropped another stitch. I hope this bloody sit-in's over by the time I finish this matinee jacket. My sister will die of shock when she gets it.
When should you?
2 months.
God, I hope we're out of here in 2 months. I can't stand it much longer.
Ugh, it's not been that bad.
Seriously, Agnes, it's asking too much. Mum needs the money. I'll give it to the end of the week, and that's me.
Is it really that bad? We're having a laugh.
It was a laugh at the start. But enough's enough. I need to be earning again.
What are you going to do?
Get a new job.
I'll miss you if you go, but I'm going to see it through.
I just feel like I'll be letting folk down.
You will let nobody down. Family comes first. Anyway, it's that bloody union that's hung us out to dry. Nobody else.
You fought a battle long and hard, fueled by defiance from shipbuilders to...
As a trade unionist, I believe it's important to support all workers who are in struggle. There was a story going around that sheriff's officers were going to come up to the factory and physically remove the women. Because, of course, the reason why they occupied was because the company intended moving all the machinery to Ireland, where they were getting better government grants. But the women got word that, I can't remember which particular date it was, but the story was that there was going to be sheriff's officers coming up to evict them from the factory. So we immediately organised a fleet of buses. When I say we, from memory, at that time, all of the buses locally was Western SMT, which was very strongly unionised itself. And my recollection is it was the shop stewards, Transport and General Workers shop stewards within the bus garage who arranged to get the buses out down to the yards. And there must have been about 300-400 went up there that day, and it was fantastic. And you know, there were speeches outside and the rest of it. But whether these people were in the vicinity or not, we don't know. But I think if they were, they'd probably get one whiff of the crowd that was there to stop them, that the eviction never happened.
That's the day that they were going to, they issued us with a redundancy notice because the time was up. You know how even if you're getting your redundancies, you've got to get so many weeks. We all got letters, so we took them and we took them out in the car park and set them on fire.
It's difficult to say how things would have been in other parts of the country, but I can't see anyone being as strong as the women from Greenock and Port Glasgow. They were willing to put up with whatever was put in front of them. They weren't going to give in. I can't see anybody anywhere else with that stalwart. Grit and determination is probably how it is. They were cheery with it too, but at the end of the day it was very serious because there was kids involved too, and all had to be fed at the end of the week. So something had to come out of this, and heels were dug in. That was it. The women were there, they weren't going to give up. God bless them.
Stand together, sit together, eat and sleep and knit together, making lifelong friends forever, all together now. The older women stand to lose jobs and homes because they choose to...
We did it, Davy. Oh, they're keeping us open. Oh, we stuck together and we won. I'm going home, Mum. Aye, this time for good.
Gentlemen, I bring you good news. Important news. The workers at Lee Jeans have emerged victorious in keeping the factory open.
Looking back, it was an experience, and it was a good experience, and I think we should all be very proud of what we done, especially when we were very young. So yeah, I'm very proud of what we've achieved.
I would say we're proud of what we've done ourselves, but proud of everybody who done the sitting, because everybody all played their own part.
Oh, definitely. Proud of everyone is. I think we've done an absolutely phenomenal job. Something that's going to go down in history.
But what I knew when I was younger, it was men, it was shipyard workers that went on strike and stuff like that, protested. But to think that my mum and these women took it on was outstanding, it really was.
And certainly in the history of Greenup, I think it's one of the most important things that we have to look back on, to show that we had a group of women who were not content to see their jobs go down the road or across the island, but were prepared to fight for it. And I think that's a message that continues down the years, even to the present.
We're doing it for Ellen. You know, we're that brick in that wall, and we're not letting that wall collapse.
We had true pals then, and we always look back and say the best pals you had was in a factory, because we worked together, we went on holiday together. You know, it was like our bubble, you know, and it was like one big family, and I think that's how it sitting worked as well as it did, because we all got on. I think now and again you feel quite kind of, you do feel proud, you feel was an achievement, and you feel quite emotional. I could still get quite emotional.
Because you think the ones that's not here anymore, who's not here to see us. And I'm just proud to say I'm sitting here talking about I was part of that. I'm as proud as anything, Ellen. And everybody that supported us. If it wasn't for the Greenup and the community, shipyard men, you name it, we wouldn't be sitting telling the story. So it's quite emotional, I think.
I'm not sorry about what I did, but I didn't do it for any fame or anything. I did it to keep jobs in the town, and I'm proud of that.
Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na na na.
Legion girl working hard on the factory floor. Mouths to feed and bills to pay. The teleman's at your door. Then one day you hear the news, the factory's closing down. That is when you all decide to take a stand. To take a stand.
If it takes forever,
then bring it on.
We will stand together. Together we are strong. Together we are strong. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na na na.
Bleaching girl grows up fast on the factory floor. Work to keep the family from the wolf outside the door. Then one day the word came round, the union selling out. Now we raise the barricades to lock the boss man out. To lock the boss man